Welcome back to our study called The Trouble of the Incarnation. That's right, we've been talking about the wise men and their story in Matthew chapter 2. And last couple times we got together, we talked about the wise men and their worship and how it really is a good example of what it means to worship God is to keep following after Him, to go after Him, looking for Him personally. Not just the idea of Him, not just knowing about Him. It's actually getting to know the person, meeting Him in one sense face to face. That's what the wise men did. They were not satisfied with just knowing seeing the star. They were not dissatisfied with going to Judea. They're not dissatisfied with just going to Jerusalem, the capital of Judea. They were not just satisfied with going to Bethlehem. They were not satisfied until they went into the very house where Jesus is, met Him, were able to bow down before Him and give them their gifts. And so that's how far they went. And that's exactly what we need to do. Now let's talk about Herod, because Herod has a response here. It says that he was troubled when he heard what was going on. So Herod feared losing his throne and plotted against Christ. You know, why is he trying to kill all these kids? He was afraid of what this meant. So the gospel exposes and challenges the sinful priorities of the world. Herod is representing the world, including the other people in Jerusalem. What do they do? For Herod, it's murder, and for the other people, they were just concerned. So the gospel brings conflict as it confronts human pride and rebellion. And the gospel conflicted with Herod's his agenda. So as John 3 says, light has come into the world, but people love darkness instead of light. Man, that's Herod to a T. And I also see what Jesus said about Himself. In Luke chapter 12, verse 51, He says, "Do you think I came to bring peace on earth? No, I tell you, but division." So in one sense, He is the Prince of Peace. He brought peace to people who are actually following Him. But then He also brought His entrance into the world, brought peace, but it also brought division, like it says, problems. It brought a whole bunch of problems. Because now it divided the believers and unbelievers. It divided God's people from everybody else. His coming, they were divided before, more or less, but even though they kept going back to the world and trying to become a part of the world, now His people would be really divided from the world. They would be in the world still, but they would not be of the world. Unfortunately, in the past, in the Old Testament, you see a lot of times His people, Israel, were of the world still. They were not followers of God. They did not, were not seeking the Messiah. They hated God. And so a lot of times the people that were His people were not truly His people. There were some of His people that were His people, but a lot of His people did not believe in Him. They did not love Him. They did not want Him. They did not want to worship Him. They didn't want anything to do with Him. They were not followers of God. And so, even though they were part of His people, His covenant people, within the covenant people, there were some who actually were followers, and there's majority of them who weren't. We have Herod here with his hypocrisy. He pretends to worship Christ while seeking His destruction. Right? Oh, I'll go worship Him, but then he really wants to kill them, as we find out. Oftentimes, outward religiosity can mask inward rebellion against God. And that's true with Herod. Matthew 15:8 says, "This people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me." There you go. And then 2 Timothy 3:5, "Having the appearance of godliness, but denying its power." That's what many people had. They have an appearance of godliness. Oh, wow, look at these people are going to synagogue. These people are doing all these great things. But when Christ came, they're like, what? Oh, let's kill this guy. And then you see, besides Herod, you see all Jerusalem was troubled alongside with Herod. And so the fear of political upheaval overshadowed joy over the Messiah's birth. They didn't know what this was going to do. This is a new king of the Jews, and it's not Herod's son. What's going to happen? So the gospel brings a people to worldly systems, but ultimate peace to believers. And so you have that division. Peace on earth to whom His favor rests. Everyone else is troubled. John 16:33 says, "In the world you will have tribulation, but take heart, I have overcome the world." So that's describing that division, that problem that troubled. There's a tragedy of rejecting God's grace, though. They were troubled by the offer of salvation rather than rejoicing in it. Indifference to Christ leads to spiritual ruin. So that's our lesson for today. Come back next time as we'll learn about the conclusion.